Hello, welcome back to the True Power of Sonic Scaling series, where I go era by era to tell you how powerful Sonic truly is. Part 1 was the foundation. The classic era showed us that Sonic was already far stronger than most people realized. He had extreme speed, planetary to arguably multiversal level threats, chaos, emerald transformations, time travel feats, dimensional interactions, and a growth curve that kept rising with every game. But now, we enter the era where everything changes. The adventure era. This is where Sonic stops being just a legendary platform hero and becomes a true high-tier force in gaming. Because from this point forward, the stakes evolve dramatically. No longer just islands, no longer just fortresses, no longer just robots. Now Sonic faces ancient chaos entities, city-destroying monsters, artificial life forms built to surpass him, planetary weapons, space colonies, rival superforms, and eventually, threats to time itself. This is also the era where Sonic matures. The world gets larger, the lore gets deeper, the enemies get smarter, and Sonic keeps getting stronger. That's the key. Many people scale Sonic based on one game, one featuring, one transformation. But power in this franchise is cumulative. Every victory matters. Every new rival matters. Every stronger boss raises the ceiling. And in the adventure era, that ceiling starts breaking. We'll be covering Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Heroes, Shadow the Hedgehog, and the road leading directly into Sonic 06. Meaning by the end of this part, we'll understand how Sonic went from classic powerhouse to a character capable of fighting gods, matching ultimate life forms, and challenging reality-level threats. If Part 1 built the myth, Part 2 begins the ascension. This is the true power of Sonic. Part 2. Now we begin the adventure era. And this is one of the biggest turning points in Sonic history, because classic Sonic was already powerful. By the end of the classic timeline, we established Sonic had scaling anywhere from planetary all the way to multiversal depending interpretation, with immeasurable speed arguments through time travel feats, Chaos Emerald hierarchy, hypersonic, and progressive base growth. But Sonic Adventure changes something fundamental. Sonic is no longer a rising prodigy. He is now the fully evolved result of everything the classic era built. And the clearest sign of that is that modern base Sonic begins doing things older, Super Sonic once needed transformations for. This is where the progression model starts paying off. Let's start with the setting. Station Square, Mystic Ruins, ancient Echidna lore, Chaos Shrines, the Master Emerald, and a living entity named Chaos. This game immediately deepens the cosmology. Chaos is not just another boss, he is directly tied to the Chaos Emeralds, ancient civilization collapse, Tikal, and the spiritual energy system of the verse. That matters because Sonic's opponents are no longer machines borrowing power. They are embodiments of it. Phase 1. Base Sonic versus Chaos 0 and Chaos 4. Early in the story, Sonic defeats Chaos in multiple forms. Chaos 0, then later Chaos 4. This is huge for his progression, because Chaos gains power through emerald absorption. By Chaos 4, we are dealing with an entity empowered by 4 Chaos Emeralds. Now remember what the Emeralds represented in the classic era, the highest source of power in the setting. Artifacts capable of granting supersonic, stabilizing worlds, and fueling cosmic-level transformations. So if base Sonic is physically overpowering at being fueled by most of the Emerald set, that means base Sonic has dramatically evolved. This is not speculative. This is direct story scaling. And now let's use Newton's third law, the the framework many scalers like using. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. If Sonic can strike Chaos hard enough to damage, disperse, and overpower a liquid god empowered by multiple Chaos Emeralds, then Sonic's own body must withstand equivalent forces, meaning his durability scales with his striking power. That places adventure-based Sonic immediately in multiversal discussions under Emerald functionalities. Not because he says it, because he physically proves it. Phase 2. The Light Speed Attack. Now we get one of the most underrated upgrades in Sonic history, the Ancient Light, the Crystal Ring, and the Light Speed Attack. This is more than a move. It is the modernization of Sonic's classic speed law into combat application. In older games, Sonic's absurd speed was mostly traversal-based. Now he weaponizes it directly. He charges kinetic energy, then instantly attacks enemies at light speed. That matters because it bridges a gap. Travel speed becomes combat speed. Movement becomes offensive technique. Under your higher-end model, if classic Sonic already had immeasurable movement through temporal feats, then Adventure Sonic now applies transcendent movement in actual battle scenarios. That pushes base Sonic's combat speed even higher into immeasurable or irrelevant discussions. And again, his body survives repeated acceleration and deceleration from these bursts, so durability rises with speed output. Phase 3. Egg Viper, surpassing human perfection. Then we get the Egg Viper, Eggman's ultimate anti-Sonic machine. This is important because Eggman does not build for old Sonic. He builds for current Sonic. Every new mech is designed around Sonic's latest benchmark, meaning Egg Viper should logically scale above the Death Egg robot, big arms, flying battery systems, and prior anti-Sonic tech. And Sonic defeats it, in base. This is massive progression evidence. Adventure Sonic is not just classic Sonic with new graphics. He is stronger, faster, more durable, and more refined. Under your framework, if classic Sonic was already multiversal tier through Emerald progression, then a base Sonic who continues surpassing upgraded anti-Sonic machines enters high multiversal territory. Phase 4. Chaos 6, the Hard Proof. This may be the cleanest feat in the game. Base Sonic defeats Chaos 6, an evolved Chaos empowered by 6 Chaos Emeralds. This is exactly the type of feat most scalers' model depends on. Because if 7 Emeralds represented the full supersonic benchmark, and Sonic in base is now defeating a 6 Emerald God form, then base Sonic has effectively reached the level of his former transformed self. That means older Super Sonic becomes the new base benchmark. This is one of the strongest natural progression arguments in the franchise. You don't need weird assumptions. The story shows it. So, under my established scaling, base Sonic by late adventure has fully entered the multiversal tier. Not future potential. Current stats. Current base form. Phase 5. Super Sonic versus Perfect Chaos. Then we reach the climax. Perfect Chaos. Chaos empowered by the full 7 Emerald system, combined with rage, grief, and negative energy. This is not just stronger chaos. This is corrupted chaos, unstable divine force, world-ending power, and Sonic responds with Supersonic. But here's the deeper lore point. Tikal explains, Chaos was using the negative side of Emerald power. Sonic channels the positive side. That means Supersonic is not merely more power. He is using a higher state of the same source. Harmony over corruption. Infinite potential over destructive limitation. This creates a conceptual superiority argument. Sonic isn't just stronger than Perfect Chaos. He is the superior expression of chaos energy itself. Under my scale, if base Sonic is already multiversal, then Super Sonic becomes a full transcendence above that benchmark. That places him into high complex multiversal discussions. And because he is operating above a lower chaos state entirely, you can argue irrelevant speed through transcendence over the energy framework chaos embodies. Durability again matters. Super Sonic flies directly into concentrated attacks from perfect chaos. Tanks city-destroying energy, moves through the force of a deity that destroyed civilization 4,000 years ago, and wins. By the Newtonian equalization model, his body must match the power he outputs, so AP and durability remain parallel. Final Sonic Adventure /DX scaling. Base Sonic, attack potency, multiversal to high multiversal. Durability, equalized through physical combat output. Speed, higher immeasurable combat plus travel. Growth status, older supersonic benchmark reached in base, supersonic. Attack potency, high complex multiversal. Durability, equal to transformed output. Speed, irrelevant through transcendence over lower chaos state motion systems. Nature, positive chaos ascension state. Why Sonic Adventure is so important. This game proves the classic era wasn't the ceiling. It was training, because now base Sonic is doing what old transformations used to do. That means every future game becomes even scarier. If adventure-based Sonic equals former super tiers, what happens when later Sonic keeps growing? What happens when he meets Shadow? What happens when he fights Final Hazard? What happens when he reaches Solaris? That's where the scaling truly detonates. So the final takeaway is simple. Classic Sonic climbed the mountain. Adventure Sonic starts the next one, and he begins by turning yesterday's miracle into today's normal. Now we move into Sonic Adventure 2, and for many fans, this is where Sonic stops being simply powerful and starts becoming legendary. Because Sonic Adventure showed that base Sonic had already evolved enough to battle emerald-powered gods. But Adventure 2 raises the ceiling again. Now Sonic is not just facing ancient chaos entities, he is facing engineered perfection. The ultimate life form, the space colony, Ark, chaos control, reality warping, and one of the most dangerous final threats in the entire early franchise. This is where Sonic's growth becomes impossible to ignore. Let's begin with Shadow the Hedgehog. From the moment Shadow appears, the story treats him differently. He is not another rival. He is the ultimate life form. A being designed by Gerald Robotnik as the peak of biological engineering and chaos compatibility. In other words, Shadow was created to be perfection, the perfect body, the perfect reflexes, the perfect connection to chaos energy. And what happens when he meets Sonic? They match each other, speed for speed, blow for blow, rival for rival. That is one of the most important feats in the game, because if Shadow is the manufactured pinnacle, then Sonic reaching parity through natural growth means Sonic has evolved into that same tier on his own. He was not built in a lab. He was not engineered. He earned it through progression. That alone says everything about how far Sonic had come since the classic era. And physically, this matters too. Trading attacks with Shadow means Sonic's body can withstand clashes with a being designed to handle the full power of chaos energy. He is no longer just surviving planetary threats. He is colliding with the ultimate benchmark itself. That places Base Sonic at the top of the setting's natural hierarchy. Now let's talk speed, because Adventure 2 gives Sonic one of his most famous intelligence and power feats, the fake Emerald Chaos Control. After being trapped in an exploding capsule, Sonic uses a fake Chaos Emerald to perform Chaos Control and escape. This moment is huge, because Chaos Control had been portrayed as a high-level space-time technique linked to true Chaos Emerald power. Yet Sonic performs it with an imitation, a weaker substitute, and it still works. Why? Because the Emerald is only part of the equation. The user matters too. Sonic's own Chaos aptitude, instinct, and power are so advanced that he can force an inferior tool to perform a superior function. That means Sonic is no longer dependent on external power sources. He has become compatible with them at a deeper level. And from a speed perspective, this is enormous. Chaos Control is not ordinary movement. It is instant displacement through warped space-time. Sonic doesn't simply run somewhere faster. He commands reality to move him. He bends distance. He bypasses the normal route entirely. So while classic Sonic had already shown impossible movement through raw speed, Adventure 2. Sonic now demonstrates mastery over movement through dimensional control. That pushes Sonic's speed scaling into an even higher category. He is no longer only outrunning time, he is manipulating it. Then we reach the BioLizard, the prototype ultimate life form. A monstrous chaos reactor, unstable but devastatingly powerful. This creature represents Gerald Robotnik's first attempt at perfection before Shadow. And it is dangerous for a reason. The BioLizard manipulates gravity, distorts the battlefield, and later fuses into something even worse. Yet Base Sonic battles and overcomes it. That is another major progression marker, because Sonic is now defeating prototype lifeforms designed around Chaos Mastery itself. Not random monsters, not machines. Living weapons built to surpass nature, and Base Sonic is stronger. Now we move to the climax. Final Hazard, the BioLizard fused with the space colony Ark. And this is where the scale of the story explodes. The Ark is not a small machine. It is a colossal orbital colony tied to Gerald Robotnik's greatest research, Chaos Systems, and the Eclipse Cannon. Its descent threatens planetary catastrophe. Its weapon systems threaten mass destruction. And fused with Final Hazard, it becomes one of the greatest threats Sonic has faced so far. So what does Sonic do? He transforms. Super Sonic returns. And this time, he is joined by Super Shadow. This is important because the super forms in Adventure 2 are stronger than the super form from Sonic Adventure. Sonic has continued to grow. So when he transforms now, he is amplifying a much higher base benchmark than before. That means every new supersonic appearance is not static. It scales upward with Sonic himself. And now Super Sonic and Super Shadow confront Final Hazard directly. They fly through space, tank extreme energy, withstand the forces of a collapsing orbital catastrophe, and strike hard enough to stop it. That means their durability and attack power are operating on a level far beyond the earlier eras. Then, there is Chaos Control on a global scale. Together, Sonic and Shadow use Chaos Control to help halt the Ark's catastrophic fall. This is one of the clearest examples of chaos energy being used not as a combat trick, but as large-scale reality manipulation. Distance, inertia, momentum, mass. All of it becomes secondary to willpower and chaos mastery. And that matters because the manuals repeatedly imply that chaos energy converts thoughts into power, meaning the stronger the user's will, the greater the result. So Sonic's power is not only tied to stats, it is tied to spirit, resolve, growth, and in moments of crisis, those traits let him exceed normal limits. So where does Sonic Adventure 2 leave Sonic? Base Sonic has matched the ultimate life form, mastered chaos control with a fake emerald, defeated advanced chaos-engineered threats, and continued proving that every version of Sonic surpasses the last. Meanwhile, Super Sonic rises to an entirely higher tier again, helping stop Final Hazard and prevent global disaster through direct power and chaos mastery. This is why Adventure 2 is so important. It turns Sonic from a hero who can access great power into a hero who naturally belongs among it. The Chaos Emeralds are no longer miracles beyond him. They are tools he understands. Shadow is no longer unreachable perfection. He is a rival. Space-time techniques are no longer forbidden secrets. They are techniques Sonic can use himself. That is a massive shift. And if Sonic has already reached this level now, then the next games become even more dangerous. Because next comes Sonic Heroes, team battles, Neo Metal Sonic, further evolution, and eventually, the road to Sonic 06, where Sonic goes from legendary to absurd. Now we move into Sonic Heroes, and this game is important for a different reason than Adventure or Adventure 2. Those games focused on Sonic's individual growth, his rivalry with Shadow, his mastery of chaos energy, his rise into top-tier status. But Sonic Heroes changes the formula. Now the story becomes about teamwork, synergy, shared power, and one of the most dangerous concepts in the franchise, an enemy who has copied everything Sonic has become. Because Sonic Heroes is the game where Sonic doesn't just fight stronger threats. He fights his own history weaponized against him. Let's begin with Team Sonic. For the first time in a major 3D title, Sonic's power is explicitly combined with Tails and Knuckles in a core battle system. Some people look at this and assume it weakens Sonic, but from a scaling perspective, it does the opposite. Because each teammate specializes in something different. Sonic is speed, Knuckles is raw power, Tails is intelligence, support tech, and ranged energy. And when these traits are synchronized, the result is greater than any one member alone. That means Team Sonic is not a nerf. It is a stacked combat unit. This becomes obvious through Team Blast, Sonic Overdrive, a coordinated attack where Sonic is launched, accelerated, and amplified by his teammates. That matters because Sonic is not simply using his own speed. He is being boosted by Knuckles' force and Tails' energy support, then converted into offensive momentum. So every time Team Sonic uses these combined techniques, we are seeing additive scaling, the strengths of all three heroes channeled through one attack. And Sonic's body survives being accelerated, redirected, and weaponized through that process. That means his durability rises alongside the combined output. Then we have the broader cast, Team Dark, Team Rose, the Chaotix. This matters because Sonic Heroes expands the top tiers of the verse. Shadow returns. Rouge joins elite-level combat. Omega enters as a walking war machine. Even secondary teams are now operating on higher benchmarks than earlier eras. The average power level of the cast is rising, and Sonic remains at the center of it. Now let's talk about the real threat, Metal Sonic. Because this is not the Metal Sonic of older games. This is Neo Metal Sonic, smarter, stronger, more adaptive, and most importantly, he has been studying everyone. Throughout the game, Metal Sonic secretly gathers biodata from the major teams. That phrase matters. Not just attack patterns, not just surface techniques, biodata, meaning he is copying the traits, abilities, and combat signatures of the strongest characters in the era. That includes Sonic's speed, Shadow's chaos affinity, Knuckles' strength, chaos-linked properties, and data from multiple elite fighters at once. This turns Metal Sonic into something terrifying. He is no longer a rival machine. He is a composite threat built from the best qualities of everyone else. And narratively, this is huge. Because Metal Sonic represents a common theme in Sonic stories. Can technology replicate what makes Sonic special? Speed can be copied, moves can be copied, energy signatures can be copied, but can growth be copied? Can heart be copied? Can instinct be copied? That is the question Heroes asks. Then, Neo Metal Sonic evolves again. Metal Overlord, a colossal draconic final form built from accumulated data and overwhelming power. This is one of the strongest bosses of the era. Not because he is large, because he is built from the combined benchmarks of everything that came before him. Sonic's speed, Shadow's chaos potential, Chaos's fluid adaptability, Knuckles' power, and the processing advantage of a machine body. On paper, Metal Overlord should be superior to nearly everyone. That is what makes the fight so important. Now look at the battle itself. Standard attacks are not enough. Even transformed heroes cannot simply brute force him through ordinary means. That means Metal Overlord's durability is massively above prior Adventure era bosses. He is not another Final Hazard clone. He is a new level of composite resilience. So how do the heroes respond? They ascend together. Team Supersonic, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles empowered through the Chaos Emeralds. And this matters because the transformation is no longer only personal. It becomes collective. Shared heroic force directed against an enemy made from stolen potential. That symbolism matters. The genuine article versus the counterfeit version. Now the Team Blast in this form becomes critical. Supersonic power. The move capable of damaging Metal Overlord when normal attacks fail. That means the combined positive force of Team Sonic exceeds the copied data model Metal built for himself. This is why Metal Sonic always loses in the end. He can copy stats, he can copy abilities, he can copy records, but he cannot perfectly replicate the source of growth behind them. Then there's speed scaling. Metal Overlord can utilize chaos-based techniques, including time-affecting abilities and battlefield control. Yet Supersonic still moves, attacks, and overwhelms him. That means Sonic's already absurd speed from Adventure 2 continues to rise. He is no longer just reacting to chaos control. He is fighting through chaos-level battlefield manipulation in active combat. That is another natural progression marker. So, where does Sonic Heroes leave Sonic? Base. Sonic remains elite, now proven capable of synchronizing with other top tiers for even greater output. His teamwork does not lower him, it expands him. Metal Sonic confirms Sonic's prior feats were worth copying in the first place. And Team Supersonic defeats one of the most statistically dangerous enemies in the era. An enemy built from Sonic's own peak history. That is powerful symbolism and powerful scaling. This is why Sonic Heroes matters. It proves Sonic is not only strong alone, he makes others stronger with him. It proves Shadow is no longer the only rival benchmark. Now the whole cast is climbing. And it proves that copying Sonic's numbers is not enough. Because what truly separates Sonic is progression itself. The ability to keep rising, to keep adapting, to keep surpassing the version of himself from yesterday. And if that is where the Adventure era stands now, then the next step becomes even darker. Because next comes Shadow the Hedgehog. alien warfare, Black Arms technology, Chaos powers pushed further than ever, and the road to Sonic 06 grows closer, where Sonic's scaling stops being controversial and starts becoming outrageous. Now we move into Shadow the Hedgehog, and this is one of the most important games for Sonic cosmology, because until now, the franchise had mostly focused on Earth-bound conflicts, ancient gods, chaos entities, space colonies, robotic empires. Massive threats, yes, but still threats tied closely to Sonic's world. Shadow the Hedgehog changes that. Now the scale becomes galactic, alien, interstellar, and deeply connected to the biological source of chaos power itself. This is where the series proves the modern era was never a reset. It was an expansion. Let's begin with the Black Arms, the invading alien species led by Black Doom. These are not random monsters. They are repeatedly portrayed as an ancient cosmic force that has devastated civilizations across the stars. A galactic scourge, predators moving from world to world, and their headquarters, the Black Comet. A massive celestial structure that returns every 50 years. This is important because the Black Comet is not just a ship. It is effectively a mobile world, a species habitat, a planetary-scale war base moving through space. That means Shadow is not simply fighting soldiers. He is fighting a civilization-level threat with cosmic reach. Now look at Shadow himself. In Sonic Heroes, Shadow was one of many top tiers. Here, he becomes the sole focus, and that lets the game fully showcase what the ultimate life form really means. Shadow was created to be perfection, the ultimate organism, peak chaos compatibility, a being built to survive and weaponize power others could barely contain. And throughout the game, Base Shadow tears through elite Black Arms forces, advanced machinery, and high-level enemies repeatedly. That matters because these are threats with interstellar reputation, yet Shadow handles them directly. Now let's talk about the inhibitor rings, one of the most important details in Shadow lore. Many people assume Shadow's rings grant him power, but the opposite interpretation is stronger. They regulate him. They suppress excess output. They keep overwhelming chaos energy under control. So when Shadow removes them, he is not gaining something new. He is releasing what was already there. That is a huge distinction, because if standard base Shadow is already comparable to Sonic and the top tiers of heroes, then an unsealed Shadow becomes dramatically more dangerous. His speed increases, his output rises, his chaos powers become more volatile and direct. This turns Shadow into a raw conduit of controlled destruction. And narratively, this fits perfectly. Sonic and Shadow represent two sides of the same force. Sonic channels chaos through instinct, freedom, and momentum. Shadow channels chaos through focus, control, and precision. Sonic grows naturally. Shadow was engineered. Yet both keep reaching higher levels. That contrast is one of the strongest themes of the era. Now we reach Black Doom, the true mastermind, a being directly tied to Shadow's creation and bloodline. And this is where the cosmology deepens. Because Shadow is not just a laboratory creation, he is a hybrid. Part of his existence comes from Black Doom's biology, meaning Shadow's connection to chaos energy is not only technological, it is genetic, built into his very structure. That makes Shadow uniquely dangerous. He doesn't borrow chaos power, he resonates with it by nature. Black Doom himself is no ordinary villain. He demonstrates large-scale chaos manipulation, battlefield warping, mind influence, and spatial control. At times, his presence alone bends the environment. This matters because Sonic villains are evolving again. We have gone from machines to gods, to engineered life forms, to cosmic parasites manipulating reality through inherited chaos power. That is a clear escalation. Then we reach Devil Doom, Black Doom empowered through the Chaos Emeralds. This is one of the strongest final bosses of the pre-Zero 6 era, because now we have an ancient cosmic overlord, enhanced by the full Emerald system, in a warped battle space shaped by his own power. That is not a normal boss fight. That is a clash of high-tier chaos entities. And to stop him, Shadow ascends, Super Shadow returns. This is critical, because just like Sonic, Shadow's super form scales upward with his base form. It is not frozen at Adventure 2 levels. Every time Shadow grows stronger naturally, the transformation amplifies a stronger starting point. So Super Shadow here is stronger than previous appearances by default. And now he defeats Devil Doom directly. He flies through concentrated attacks, tanks energy from a being empowered by the full Emerald system, and overpowers him in the end. That places Super Shadow among the highest tiers seen so far in the franchise. Then we get one of the most impressive chaos feats in the era, teleporting the Black Comet. A moon-sized cosmic structure with internal space, infrastructure, and species population. Shadow uses chaos control on a massive scale, relocating this enormous body into the path of destruction. This is not ordinary teleportation. This is large-scale coordinate manipulation, mass displacement through will and chaos mastery. Distance and size become secondary. That shows how advanced Shadow's understanding of chaos power has become. He is no longer using it only for movement or combat. He is altering the battlefield on a cosmic scale. So, where does Shadow the Hedgehog leave the verse? Base Shadow confirms the top tiers of heroes were still climbing. Unsealed Shadow proves some characters are carrying hidden reserves far beyond their normal presentation. Black Doom expands the franchise into galactic and biological chaos lore. And Super Shadow defeats one of the strongest empowered threats seen so far, all before Sonic 06 even begins. This is why Shadow the Hedgehog matters. It proves the modern era is not repeating itself. It is widening. The battlefield is larger. The enemies are older and more dangerous. The use of chaos power is more refined. And the top characters are beginning to operate on scales that earlier eras only hinted at. And if this is where Shadow stands now, then Sonic is still rising alongside him, which means the next step is inevitable. Sonic 06. The game where time collapses, where multiple timelines converge, where Solaris appears, and where Sonic's scaling stops being arguable and becomes outrageous. But wait, now I must apologize. Before we enter Sonic 06, there is one final stop that cannot be ignored: the Sonic Advance trilogy. These games are often overlooked because they are handheld titles. 2D presentation, portable hardware, smaller scope visually, and because of that, many people underestimate how important they are. But from a scaling perspective, the Advance series is one of the most valuable bridges in the franchise, because it connects the raw archetypal power of the classic era to the reality-breaking cosmology of the modern era. This is where Sonic's feats stop being implied and start becoming visibly multiversal. Let's begin with Sonic Advance. The first game already reinforces an important truth. Sonic's base form remains elite. Even outside the main console titles, he is still clearing advanced Eggman machinery, high-end zones, and top-level threats with no sign of regression. That matters because it confirms continuity. Sonic does not lose power between games. He continues forward. The foundation built in Adventure and Heroes remains intact. Now we move to Sonic Advance 2, and this game contains one of the most underrated speed feats in the franchise. In the final sequence, Sonic pursues Eggman into the upper atmosphere and beyond. Then supersonic battles in space. That matters because this is not just flying around. Sonic transitions from the planet's surface into orbital or deep space conditions in a very short time frame, then immediately enters combat. That requires absurd movement speed, but more importantly, it requires durability, vacuum exposure, atmospheric transition, rapid acceleration, instant combat readiness, and Sonic handles it seamlessly. There is also emotional context here. Sonic is rescuing Vanilla, and in Sonic stories, willpower consistently matters. The Chaos Emeralds respond to intent, resolve, and emotional drive. So moments where Sonic is protecting others often coincide with higher output. That means this is not just a random chase scene. It is Sonic pushing himself under pressure. And when Sonic pushes himself, he tends to exceed prior limits. Now we reach the crown jewel, Sonic Advance 3, one of the most underrated scaling games in the entire series. Because this game directly shows what happens when Chaos Emerald power is misused on a cosmic scale. Eggman's actions fracture reality itself. The universe is broken into separate zones or shards. Space, time, and continuity are visibly fragmented. This is massive. Because earlier games hinted that chaos power could affect worlds, Advance 3 shows the consequences directly. Reality can be split. The world can be divided into disconnected dimensions. The verse itself becomes unstable. And what does Sonic do? He navigates it, in base form, traveling across shattered reality, reconnecting zones, defeating empowered enemies, and restoring order. That is one of the strongest progression feats in the franchise. Because Sonic is no longer just defeating the enemy who caused the damage. He is operating inside broken space-time and functioning normally. That means Sonic's speed, durability, and adaptability all scale upward. He can survive where reality itself has failed. Then there's the partner mechanic. Sonic teams with Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Cream, and others. This matters because the cast as a whole is keeping pace with fractured cosmology-level threats. The average benchmark of Sonic's allies continues rising. Again, the verse is progressing, not just Sonic alone. Now let's talk about G-Merl, a machine that absorbs Chaos Emerald power and evolves into the final threat. This is another recurring theme in Sonic lore. Technology trying to imitate the source. Metal Sonic did it. Emil did it. Now G-Merl pushes it further. A mechanical being empowered by the same forces that fractured reality. And it becomes dangerous enough that Sonic must transform again. Super Sonic returns. This is critical because every time Super Sonic appears later in the timeline, the form scales higher than before. Why? Because base Sonic keeps getting stronger, and Super Sonic multiplies the current benchmark, not the old one. So Super Sonic in Advance 3 is stronger than Adventure-era Super Sonic by default through progression. Now combine that with a final boss empowered by universe-fracturing chaos energy, and the scaling rises dramatically. Super Sonic defeats Ultimate G-Merl in the void between broken shards of reality. That means Sonic is not only fighting in damaged space-time, he is winning there. This reinforces one of the biggest themes of the franchise. When chaos energy breaks the world, Sonic is the one who restores it, not by ritual, not by prophecy, by force of will and direct action. So where does the Advance trilogy leave Sonic? Base Sonic remains consistently elite and continues growing. Super Sonic demonstrates space-level speed and combat in Advance 2. Advance 3 proves chaos. Emerald misuse can fracture reality itself. Base Sonic functions inside shattered dimensions, and Super Sonic defeats a machine empowered by those same cosmic forces. That is enormous progression before Sonic 06 even begins. This is why the Advance trilogy matters so much. It prepares the audience for what comes next. Because Sonic 06 is not the first time reality is threatened, it is the biggest time. It is not the first time chaos power breaks the world, it is the most extreme version. It is not the first time Sonic crosses impossible dimensions, it is the culmination of that trend. So by the end of the Advance era, Sonic has become something undeniable. A hero who can fight in space, run through fractured realities, defeat machines empowered by universe-level energy, and keep growing every single game, which means now we are ready for Sonic 06, Solaris, multiple timelines, 3 hedgehogs united, and the game that sends Sonic scaling into absolute chaos. Now we arrive at Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and this is where everything changes. Because up until this point, Sonic has fought machines, ancient gods, engineered life forms, cosmic parasites, and even threats capable of fracturing reality itself. But Sonic 06 introduces something completely different. Not just a stronger enemy, not just a bigger threat, but a being that exists beyond the normal rules of time and space. Solaris. Solaris is not just powerful. He is described as a superdimensional life form, a being that exists simultaneously in the past, present, and future. That alone separates him from every previous enemy, because this is not just someone moving through time. This is a being that exists across time all at once. To Solaris, time is not a sequence. It is a structure, something he can observe, affect, and ultimately destroy. And that's exactly what he begins to do. Solaris is stated to consume all timelines, to collapse time and space, to erase existence itself. This is not a planetary threat, not a universal threat in the traditional sense. This is a threat to the entire temporal framework of the Sonic universe. Every timeline, every possibility, everything. Now here's where things get even more important. To fight Solaris, Sonic cannot do it alone. Because this is not a normal battle. It is a battle across time itself. So Sonic, Shadow, and Silver all transform. Super Sonic, Super Shadow, Super Silver, and together they face Solaris. But this is not just 3 characters fighting one boss. Each hedgehog engages a different temporal aspect of Solaris. Past, present, future at the same time. That means they are not fighting one opponent in one location. They are fighting a being whose existence spans multiple points in time simultaneously. And this is where speed scaling reaches its peak. Because in order to interact with Solaris, you cannot be bound by linear time. If Solaris exists everywhere in time at once, then any character who can move, react, and attack him must also operate beyond normal time constraints. And that's exactly what happens. Sonic, Shadow, and Silver are moving, dodging, and striking in a battlefield where time itself is collapsing, where cause and effect no longer function normally, where the concept of before and after is breaking down. At that point, traditional speed formulas don't apply. Distance divided by time no longer works, because time itself is being erased. And yet, they still move. They still fight. They still win. That is what places their speed into immeasurable territory. Movement that is not dependent on time. Action that exists even when time itself is failing. Now let's talk about power. Because Solaris is not just present across time. He is a higher dimensional entity, a being whose existence transcends the standard space-time structure. To damage Solaris, the hedgehogs must attack something that exists beyond a single timeline, beyond a single dimension. That means their attacks must reach that level. They are not just hitting a physical body, they are affecting a superdimensional existence. And there's another key detail here. Supersonic shares his power. He acts as the anchor, the source allowing Shadow and Silver to transform alongside him. This is important because it shows just how far Sonic has come. He is no longer just using power, he is distributing it, sustaining multiple super-level fighters at once, while still engaging a being like Solaris. That is not a weakness, that is control, that is mastery. And then comes the most important part of the battle. They don't just overpower Solaris physically, they overwhelm him across all of time. By striking him in the past, present, and future simultaneously, they collapse his existence. They force a being that exists across time to lose cohesion, to lose stability, to lose. This is not just a fight, it is a clash of concepts. Solaris represents inevitability, the unchanging flow of time, the end of all things. The hedgehogs represent change, choice, chaos, the ability to defy what is supposed to happen. And in the end, chaos wins. Then comes the final moment, the reset. Sonic and Elise extinguish the flame of Solaris, erasing the entire event from history. Time resets, the timeline is restored, and technically, none of it ever happened. But here's the important part. The experience remains, the growth remains, the progression remains. Even when the timeline is erased, Sonic continues forward stronger than before. So where does Sonic 06 leave the scaling? Base Sonic continues to scale from prior games, already operating at extremely high levels. Solaris stands as a superdimensional threat capable of collapsing all timelines. And the superforms of Sonic, Shadow, and Silver rise to meet that threat, operating beyond time itself. This is why Sonic 06 is considered the peak of the early modern era, because it takes everything that was built before, chaos energy, superforms, time manipulation, dimensional scaling, and pushes it to the absolute limit. From this point forward, Sonic is no longer just a powerful character in his world. He is a character who has fought across time, defeated a superdimensional god, and continued growing afterward. And now the question becomes even more interesting. If this is what Sonic could do, then what can he do now? Because after 06, the series doesn't slow down. It evolves again into the World Adventure era, where something unexpected happens. Base Sonic begins reaching levels that once required Supersonic, and the scaling keeps climbing. And this concludes part 2 of my in-depth Sonic scaling, where we go over what many call the Renaissance era. So what is my scaling for this portion? I would be hard-pressed to say anything below high hyperversal, if not baseline outer. Tune in for part 3, where we go into the more recent Sonic eras, and in that portion, the scaling gets insane.